Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
We are sent a code for Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector, which is the sequel to the indie game Citizen Sleeper from a few years back, which I very much enjoyed. This is the same game, but bigger and better in so many ways. I love this game.
I'm so excited to get into this because I know you haven't talked a lot about this game, but I do get texts from you occasionally. So I guess my first question with any sequel that goes bigger, I would say bigger isn't necessarily better. So because it seemed like the first one seemed like a really small game. So like blowing up a really small game seems like it can kind of be a hit or miss.
This one is very much a hit. It is bigger and better, as stated.
Yeah.
Bigger, and let's just start there. So talk about what this game is. So Citizen Sleeper, you're basically a sleeper is what you're called, which is this weird kind of in between human and AI robot thing. You're basically a human crammed into like a mechanical body. Whole big backstory on why that's happening. Whole big backstory on why these things, on like what sleepers are and how they fit into this world that I don't want to spend the 10 minutes talking through to get half of it wrong anyway. You're kind of this like weird halfway thing. So in the first game, you're a sleeper. You wake up in this small little apartment on this one space station in the belt. From there, you're basically going, okay, I have to get off of here. The company that made me is tracking me down. Like, I got to get away from here. I got to get away from here. I got to get away from here. This one takes that and expands it to the entire asteroid belt. So instead of just going and getting off one station, you're basically trying to escape this person, which turns into kind of like a gang of people later on. So basically, you wake up, your body, which is again all like robotic mechanical, has been altered in some way. You wake up with no memories as this person is like ripping you down a hallway to their space station saying, let's go, it worked, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, let's get out of here. And from there, you basically have the entire belt to explore. There's probably 8 or 9 basic hubs, like small little stations that you can go to in here. Each one kind of has a very unique story to it. So there are some that are like old corporate headquarters that have just been abandoned after years. There's some that are, crashed, like just crashed chunks of stuff on asteroids. There's all these kind of different places that you're going. You're jumping across there. And not only is it bigger in terms of just the amount of places you're going, the story, instead of being just kind of focused on you and like, what is a sleeper and how does the sleeper fit into this world? This one is going, okay, you're still a sleeper, but now you've got this guy who was basically like messing with your body, tracking you down for some reason. And every time you're going to these different places, it's kind of expanding on that. And okay, you go to one, well, no, this is actually like a big gang of people that he's running with. And then you go to another one and they start talking about like corporations and revolting against like these people. And okay, there's some like elements of like these people revolting against people. There's other ones you go to and it's just these stories of like people who've been stranded, and you're getting all these different stories to kind of piece together what's actually happening inside the world of Citizen Sleeper 2. And it does it just with phenomenal writing. It does it in a way that's just like it feels like you just got like an exposition dump, but at no point have you actually gotten one.
So it's doing world building, like what games should be doing.
Yeah, like really good world building with tons of backstory, tons of like deep dives into stuff. But at no point is it like, well, we sat down in the da corporation, and it never does that. It's just these natural conversations that are flowing. The writing in this is phenomenal.
Yeah. Is it just that kind of like, I always like that in games. It can be like really dangerous where it's just like people are already sort of existing in this world and it doesn't make sense for them to explain it to each other. So they're just like talking about whatever in this world. And then you're sort of like picking up the bits and pieces from their conversation of how the history of this world might. I think like Disco Elysium did that 1000X or did that pretty well. 1000 Times Resist did that pretty well. So this all seems like stuff that's like straight up your alley as far as like type of game plus hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Plus visual. I know you don't do visual novels too much, but like when you do them, it's like you're like you get super into like the one kind of yeah.
So it very much does get away with it because your character doesn't remember anything. So it's kind of like,
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as these other characters are talking, like they're kind of talking, they're talking around stuff. So there's lots of like, oh yeah, like you remember when da happened, right, Sleeper? And you're like,
oh, interesting.
Nope. But you do have dialogue options, so sometimes you can be like, what the hell are you talking about? Or, of course I do. And it's like,
no, fun.
Okay, which one? So it does play with it a little bit. It is very much my type of game. I think like my closest comparison that I get with this is it feels so much like The Expanse, just in like the dirty,
Yeah,
grimy sci-fi.
sure.
And I
Yeah.
love The Expanse, but it feels so much like it's kind of going for that same tone of like nobody's really good, everything's a little dirty, everything's kind of off the books. Like
Hmm.
there's some government, but like nobody really likes them anyway. So it just kind of checks all those boxes. Um, and again, just the way it evolves from just you being chased to okay, your character is like has some like agency in it of going like okay, like well, do I want to be chased forever? Do I want to fight back? Like we're just two guys on
Hmm.
this broken ass ship that we found. Like how are we going to do that? Also, they like it gets really into like what's happening with like your body because again, you're kind of this like weird mix of like human and AI and all this other stuff kind of
Hmm.
jammed into one body. So it does a lot of exploring of like what does it mean to be alive? Like who's alive? What's alive? And you have all this stuff kind of going on and like just it does so many cool things with that, like what's happening internally with the sleeper, what's happening externally in this world. Just everything is so cool. It's so well written. The ending couple scenes I won't talk about where they are, but just some of the writing in like the last 30 minutes of this game is beyond phenomenal.
Hmm. The one question I had, because I remember like Citizen Sleeper, like the first game was like, besides content wise being an intense game, like the gameplay was like really intense because it's making like everything was a hard decision. Does it still,
Yes.
does that have that still sort of like, you're not gonna be able to see everything? That's just kind of how the game works. You don't see everything. You have to make really hard decisions.
So I think there's for sure a little bit of that. It does at the end give you a like, now that we did the thing, before
Hmm.
you do this last piece, you can go back and check out stuff if you feel the need to.
Oh,
So it
interesting.
kind of
Okay.
gives you like a little loop to kind of go like, okay, like you can go back to this. Now, what it does, do I want to spoil that? It does play with that a little bit where it's like you can, but also we're gonna screw with you a little bit if you do, which is very,
Oh,
very
okay,
cool.
sure.
Um, but no, it doesn't quite give me that feeling as much. But I will say, in terms of like everything mattering and all this other stuff, you talked about with Silent Hill 2, where like you could only play it for a half hour because it was just so
Yeah.
intense that you like felt like you couldn't keep going. I had the same thing with this. I could not play this for more than like a half hour than a half hour sitting because I would get so worked up. Because to kind of get into what the game is a little bit, you have dice, right? And
Yeah.
everything is based on probability. So if you have a 1 or a 2 on your dice, it's like 50% neutral, 50% negative. You have a 3 or 4, it's like 25% positive, 50% neutral, 25 negative. If you have a 5, it's like 50% positive, 50% neutral. If you have a 6, it's 100%
Hmm.
positive. So basically, every single action is determined by those dice rolls. The guy who made this game is like huge tabletop thing. The future of Citizen Sleeper, he's kind of come out and said will be in the tabletop form. So it feels very
Hmm.
much like that. I'm not good with tabletop stuff. I don't like it, probably for part of this reason. But um, basically, everything you'll do will have that dice roll attached to it.
Hmm.
And most of the things that happen with that are like, okay, something bad will happen if you get a negative. Obviously, you'll lose energy. You'll start to do this. The game has this weird thing where like you can fail, but you feel like you can't. And it does that really, really, really well where it's like, okay, if you fail with this, and I failed one fairly early on
Hmm.
because it has these things called contracts where basically you go off of one of the main stations and do like a little mission and it kind of
Yeah.
locks you in the space with the resources that you have at the time. And they're they're not timed, but they're very clearly like if you don't have enough resources to do this, you're just going to start taking damage after damage after damage after damage, and it's going to make the game harder to progress. So you'll have to make like a choice of like, do I put a 4 or do I put a 4 in this, which is like
Hmm.
20%, 25% positive, 50% neutral, 25% negative. If it's negative, I've got like 4 negatives I can get on this entire mission. And if one of those pops now, like I'm only in like the first phase of this. Maybe there's a second
Oh,
phase.
sure. Yeah.
Like, so you just sit there like, is it worth it? I can go I can go reset and re-roll my dice, basically, which is like a cycle or a day. But when you do that, you also waste your resources. And once you run out of resources, then you start taking damage because you don't have any resources to like feed yourself and continue the job. When you
Hmm.
do that, your dice start breaking. So you could start with 5
Oh,
dice.
cool.
You play it too slow, you leave with 3 dice. To rebuild your dice, you have to go back to certain stations to rebuild them, which takes more of a different resource. So everything is just
Yeah.
so intricately layered on top of itself. It's phenomenal. And it's just
Hmm.
amazing going through that.
As you're playing the dice, is it more is it like very +1 +2 as far as like the repercussions of it, or are you getting like story repercussions, or does it depend on when you're using the dice for what? Do you get what I mean? It's like, is it
Yeah,
more like HP going down, or is it actually like story repercussions happening with these things?
both. So
Okay.
the game has bars all over. So you have an energy bar, which is basically like you automatically lose one per day until you like refill it. That goes down if you get negatives. You have stress, which if you have too much stress, that's where your dice start breaking. If you run out of energy, then instead of losing an energy every day, you get one extra stress every time your dice start breaking. Each dice has 3 health when your dice breaks you. There's bars all over the place. So that does get into it a little bit. It also, like I said, I failed one fairly early on where I just like, I didn't quite understand the systems yet. So I went into one that had like no supplies, got my ass kicked in it. And basically it was like for the next like 20 minutes, it was talking about like how you basically wrecked our ship. Like, what are we even going to do? Like,
Oh, cool.
we can't go on with this. So you're getting that. Everything you do like has some connection to it. So it'll be like, okay, you're hacking this door. Like, well, now we can't hack that door. So there's one where you're trying to like catch somebody in here. So like, okay, we're going to lure him in here and then we're going to kill him while he's in here. Well, you've got 3 different things that you have to do. You've got 5 rounds to do this. So I got like 2 or 3. It's like, well, I hope this is enough. Like we didn't quite get it. There's skill checks in there. It's just, it's so layered into these different things.
Yeah.
It's incredible how you can connect all this and make everything feel purposely tied together. And also like each thing connects to another. Nothing feels independent of anything else.
Man, that sounds cool. That sounds really cool.
Cool. And just, like I said, it's like that hard sci-fi of like, things are shit out here in the belt. The inner planets don't care about us. They've got their own war going on. Like who's in control out here? Who's not in control? Like this guy's hunting you the whole time. What's going on in your body? It's just, there's like 8 different mysteries going on in this that are all by the end are tied together. There's some really cool, like, just inner monologue thoughts of what's going on. And just the way that it plays with like what a sleeper is from the first game. Just it's immaculate. It's a great game. I loved it. Can't recommend it enough. It's January. It's the best game of 2025.
Dumb question. Do you need to play the first? Should you play? Not do you need to, but should you play the first before going in this one?
No. So a lot of the systems have changed like slightly. It kind of feels like one of those where it's like, okay, we learned what worked in the first one. We learned what didn't. Let's tweak everything a little bit just to kind of make it a little bit more impactful. Story-wise, it's completely independent. You do meet some characters from the first one. And I caught a few like references back to like, I knew a sleeper once, like that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
But nothing
too big. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing where you're going to be like, wait a minute. What is, who, why, what? No, nothing like that. It's lots of like adding on top of it more than callbacks.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good. Okay, cool. Because I might hop into this one.
You very highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Okay. Play them both, but this one I think is just it takes what it did and it's a step up from there for sure.
Nice.
We are Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment below. There's a link to support us on Coffee as well. We'll see you later.
Bye.